Welcome back, listeners, to the Cosmic Confluence podcast, the space where transformation meets soul. I'm your host, Sana, and today's episode dives into the electric intersection of quantum healing, sensual alchemy, and holistic empowerment. Listeners, my guest is the incredible Hani Cheng. She's intimacy transformation facilitator, best-selling author, and founder of the Yumm Sensual Liberation Programs. Well, she's a powerhouse who blends 33 plus healing modalities with deep Taoist and tantric wisdom, helping ambitious leaders unlock intimacy, purpose, and authentic power. And Hannah's journey from corporate success to inner liberation is more than inspiring because it's a roadmap for anyone who is ready to integrate their sensuality, spirituality, and leadership. So, listeners, if you have ever felt like success on the outside doesn't match your truth inside, this conversation is definitely your permission slip to align and transform. So let's quickly dive in. So, Hani, welcome to the show, and it is such a pleasure having you with us.
Likewise, I'm just so happy that we got to connect earlier. And listeners, I'm so excited to meet you over these vibrations of the sound waves.
That is beautiful, honey. Beautiful. So before we talk about the topic, let's try to know more about your journey. So, I mean, you left the corporate life, you embraced sensual liberation, and it's really powerful. It's really something which I can personally connect with because a year back I also left my corporate life to get into podcasting full time. So, what was that defining moment? Or maybe some kind of moment which sparked this decision and shifted everything for you.
I tell this all the time, and the story is, and honestly, like there's so many shifts since then, but the turning point was, I was in a corporate company and pursuing my dream as a like an international person who got to manage multiple teams across multiple countries and multiple regions, and we were doing really well, and it was like one of the top advertising firms with the top team in my opinion at that time, with women leaders, which I was super inspired about. And and it just seemed that it was really beautiful and perfect on paper, and I loved it in that sense, yet my body was the one that gave out. Um, I share with many that, I had a physical reaction, so I was throwing up 10 times a day, and that was a illness that I had for 15 years, and it got really serious whenever I was extra stressed out. And so, in the beginning, I thought it was, a body image thing or a mindset thing, or maybe I just didn't know how to process anxiety. And so I went to a lot of like psychologists and went to a lot of doctors to try to get it fixed. When I realized that after 15 years that psychologists didn't help me, doctors didn't help me, neurologists didn't help me, medicine didn't help me, pharmaceuticals didn't help me, Western medicine didn't help me, Chinese medicine didn't help me, then I was like, okay, cool. What is next? And so that's when I started looking at alternative medication and alternative healing, which brought me to energy healing. We were talking a little bit before. We started here on quantum healing. It took me to shamanic healing, and it took me to millions of not millions, obviously, but like, 33 modalities at least, and many more. And so each one of these modalities, being the intense person that I am, my sister always tells me, "You're so intense." And I'm like, "I know, but I really love diving into my rabbit holes." I started really studying all these modalities and seeing how changing my mind, changing my energy could really change my body. And so the turning point really was when I was in this plant medicine ceremony that I self facilitated, what with the support of professionals. By
Mhm.
that time, I could run my own shamanic journey for myself, and so I did that. And I created safe space for myself with that medicine, and I had other people around me to make sure that if anything were to happen, like my heart would stop or something, that there was emergency support. However, I self facilitated intellectually, spiritually, energetically the process. Because I like privacy. And then I asked myself, like, am I ready to let this disease go? Deep within me, a voice came out before I finished my question, and it said a resounding yes. As it was a voice I didn't control. It was a voice that was speaking through me by itself. And in that moment, just like any spiritual psychedelic experience, I just knew without a shadow of a doubt that I needed to take everything I had learned until that moment in time and start teaching it, which is why I started writing a book that has every single chapter matching how to turn your passions into action and innovation, because that was my master's in innovation. And so I started turning that into innovation, lifestyle. And then I started traveling around the world giving book tours. And so the turning point was really understanding that there is an inner voice that we have, and there's an inner guidance. I call that the infinite being and the infinite body, and that her voice and her desires and her mission is super loud, and it is very scary to leave every single safety blanket behind and a safety paycheck and to go on a embark on a journey just like, you did, to go from corporate paycheck to freelancer, or to then, to uncertainty, to really understand, okay, like what is my capacity? What is my capability? Can I survive out in this economical world on my own without the security of a contract that is a monthly income contract, right? And so that was like my first turning point. And then learning the skills for that self worth to build a business, and then eventually change that business 3 or 4 times to add on things. Um, we can go into that too.
I mean, first of all, that's such a powerful shift. And is it safe to say, Hani, that that inner voice, which kind of gave you the direction, was it your higher self or higher conscious talking to you, or was it something else?
It's a really good question. So I've been in business now for more than 10 years, I guess, 2015 to 2025. Yeah, 10 years. And so in the beginning, like, I thought that was my higher self. It was my inner self. It was a part of me that was connected to universal consciousness. And it felt that way. It felt like, wow, like there is something that is moving me. And the more I uncovered and the deeper I went into energy work, I realized it is not only that, but it is flow itself. And it was my infinite being, which I equate to a even more all-seeing version of higher self, because higher self has limitations that are bound by the new age concept of it. But even without that, the idea of higher self beyond that could be like even more infinite and energetically even more expansive. And then beyond that, it's even more like you are the flow, right? It's the flow that's working through you. So that's sort of how I interpret it now. And at that moment, if you're really, familiar with the higher self, you can call it the higher self. If you're really familiar with the word inner goddess or inner Buddha or Krishna, or whatever you may call your inner god, like that could be your way of looking at and understanding, okay, what is it that was actually you're connecting to, and how is it that that can work through you, because because it's so much more energetically efficient when you're just not fighting it.
There can be so many interpretations of that. Wow, that is so interesting, honey. Such an interesting journey. Um, and I mean, 33 modalities. Um, how how exactly do you blend all of them? And before even talking about that, since we are focused on talking about quantum healing, I have had so many conversations on healing, but the recent one, somatic healing. What exactly is quantum healing? Because I mean, does it bring the laws of physics or the concept of physics into the world of healing? I mean, how exactly both of these are tied into together?
Quantum healing, came into my life because of my father says it's because of me that it came into his life, and then he's a scientist and a chemical engineer, and then I say it's because of him that it came into my life. So, I come from a background of, I'm just highly empathic, I'm a psychic in many ways, and I can really interpret energy, and I'm very sensitive, highly sensitive HSP. And, also highly intellectual because, my father is a nerd and a genius and all that kinda stuff, and so he's really honed in my intellectual stimuli as a kid. And so what it does, a quantum machine or a quantum concept actually bridges science and spirituality. And so we meet on the same page of that. And so it's really supportive for people with rational minds and also with a spiritual understanding of life. So quantum is the smallest unit of measure of life itself. So it can be seen as photonic light, it can be seen as diodes, it can be seen as electrons, even smaller than that. So smaller than atomic, it's super tiny. And so anytime you even have a thought, you have an idea, you have a concept, or you do something, it affects things on a physical or as a quantum level, as a physical level or a quantum level that actually shoots out um, vibrations in response to you. And you also respond to stimuli on a quantum level. It's super tiny and it's super small. So it barely, you can't feel it, right? Unless you are so fine tuned into feeling every strand of your hair, or even smaller. So it's a very thin, sensitive parts of you. And what is it, right? So some people call it the information field, which is a field of information that many quanta of I like just many units of this added
Mhm.
together become a field of information. So the purpose, so quantum field has a couple of principles that they live by. And you can check this up online. There's like a couple of, it's just like Newton's law of physics. There's also quantum laws. There's a bunch of them. And the purpose of quantum and the purpose of quantum healing is harmonization and optimization. So the guiding principle for all of this is that when your body is in harmony, it is self-healing. So the idea is to resonate the healing vibrations that bring your body back to its original state of health. And when you're in your original state of health, then you're able to self heal, you're able to self solve problems, and you're able to access the natural connection you have with the greater, greater good, the greater like confluence of the cosmic confluence, the greater cosmic confluence of healing. And so when we're looking at someone in the ICU, for example, during COVID, we had to use our quantum machine quite a lot because people were not able to see practitioners. They can't even touch practitioners. And so remote quantum healing was very popular because we can't even enter, let alone be in the hospital itself, like in the ICU ward. And so at the deathbed, when someone is in a coma, for example, the only way you can really support them is through healing long distance, right? And the information can be beamed into their location based on the principles of intention and there's a lot of, like, principles in quantum that sound very hard to get, like non-localization and, something can be in 2 places at once, which is non-localization. There's a lot of principles, but basically what happens is that they're able to experience this healing vibration, and when their body accepts it, it's able to influence their body to come back to a natural state of functioning. It might take a bit longer because sometimes it could be a psychological block that allows them to receive that information. Sometimes their organs are shutting down, and you can see on the machine itself like what specific emotion or history, or maybe a fight with their daughter has like influenced that the discordance of that particular organ. So, long story short, quantum is a the smallest way of measurement. Mostly, you can't measure it, but it is the smallest unit of information exchange. And quantum healing then is you're healing yourself through the adjustment in that information flow within yourself and also in relation to other people. So it could be between me and you. It can be between in the family, right? So even within like a chart, like a family constellation, you can see the relationships and the interactions between each. And you can also do it between a system. So, a buyer of a house, a seller of a house, the house itself, the land, the um the energetic field and the feng shui of the house. They also have connection and relating points. Is this the only thing that I do? No. So for me, with the 33 modalities, I usually look at the client and I see like what is their belief system. And then from there, I can pick up whichever toolkit that's going to match their education, their understanding of the world, maybe their religion, whatever it is that they understand already. Then I'm just going to take that and see like which modalities are going to take them further, which is why I have so many because, if they're speaking a language, then I use the same language or the closest language to what they already know to bring them to the next level.
Mhm. First of all, beautifully explained about quantum healing, and I really loved that fact that it's all about harmonizing everything inside out of your body, your soul, your mind, so that your body gets into that cycle of self healing, natural healing. Um, um, and secondly, I now exactly understand uh, 33 healing modalities because you don't have to um, destroy or break the belief systems of a specific person. You can tailor the approach according to their comfort, their preferences. So that is a really really interesting, really hard or difficult. So honey, my question to you on these 33 modalities is, how much time did it take for you? I mean, um, from where exactly did you start? And since, specifically, I would also like to ask, you integrate Taoist and Tantric wisdom with quantum healing. So how exactly all these traditions, they intersect and they interplay with each other?
Oh, I love this question. So my journey is from the mind because I was intellectually um focused, academically focused as a kid, right? It's like, "Oh, get that grade, go to that good college," your intellect was praised a lot as a child. So, I went from mind. So, I went from neurolinguistics deprogramming. There was a lot of subconscious stuff. So, understanding the mind, understanding the brain, understanding neurology, and understanding patterns and neural pathways, like neuroscience. I wanted to be a doctor at some point because I thought it was so cool, but and so I, of course, took all the classes that took me there, and then I decided that I even took organic chemistry and all that, and then I realized, okay, actually, I'm not wanting to be in a hospital for 10 years before I got tenure, so the freedom lack of freedom dissuaded me. However, what I did learn was I learned about the myelin sheath. I learned about, the electron and the synaptic cleft. And I learned about sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system and bio. And I learned about the chemical reactions of like different neurotransmitters. And so, and the enzymes and whatnot. And so then of course like the first approach that I took was everything about the brain and everything about how our brain and our thoughts affect our body because my body was throwing up at that time, right? Of
Mhm.
course, this stuff when I healed it, it was healthy. it became healthy. However, so at that point, I went into the brain, and so I did that, and I did coaching because I was like, "Oh, coaching has so much potential for the future in terms of, like, management and teams," and I always picked things that I was like, "Okay, is this going to give me an ROI or not?" So I was very rational about that in the beginning, the first few years. And then I went to business conferences, and at business conferences, I would meet people with, like, oh, human design, or, like, people who did MBTI or did different types of modalities or personality tests, or ways of understanding how the human mind and the body worked. And at some point along the line, I did innovation, so that was design thinking and creativity work, and then I started realizing that actually I also really wanted to heal things on a deeper level, and just by thinking my way through it, it was not enough because the symptoms would still come back. So I was like, "Okay, I need to go deeper. What is on a deeper level?" And I was like, on a deeper level, it's psychology, deep psychology, subconscious, hypnosis. So I started doing hypnosis, and I started doing Ericksonian hypnosis, and realizing that, oh my gosh, like actually my mind is completely brainwashable, and I can just positively brainwash and manifest. And then on the other hand, I was also following Abraham Hicks. This was in 2008. And I was like, "Oh, this is so cool. There's a universe, and there's like and you can call on the powers of the universe to manifest things for you by thinking your way into a higher vibrational thought process." And consciousness came into play. And then Buddhism, I looked at Buddhism and was like, "Oh, I can like detach from things." And I was reading The Alchemist, and I thought about that a little bit, and that started getting me really interested in energy work. Energy work led me to shamanic healing. Shamanic healing was more about energy healing on a level of, tribes, right? So, or on a level of the connection of our place in nature. So shamanic traditions, a lot of it is like sky, water, earth, it's a lot of, very grounded ancient traditions and lineages that worked with the elements, and Native American sort of healing modalities, um, and grounding techniques, and I felt really connected to that because I felt very primal, and for someone who lived in her head all the time, it really nice to be in the body and in the world. And the energetic healing really helps me understand mission and purpose on a higher level. Like, okay, there's a higher calling for me, and it needs to be on that. With the energy healing I learned, and the plant medicines that I work with, which is physical eating of you know, medicinal plants, I realized that there was a lot of um, emotional release that needed to happen. Emotional release from a perspective of old memories or old ways of being that needed to die. And that death is not something I can be like, okay, I'm not going to be a people pleaser anymore. I'm going to be, assertive. And it's not a decision. It actually requires a transformational process. So shamanism and emotional healing and emotional processing taught me how to connect with my emotions. Qi Gong as well. So I learned and studied with a Qi master for 5 years, and she helped me connect with my anger. As a woman in an Asian culture, anger for a male in an Asian culture, it was perfectly fine to feel anger. But as a woman, if you feel anger, you were aggressive. And so I had very much like unconsciously disconnected from my anger, which also meant I disconnected from my power, because on the other side of anger is power. And so it took me a long time to connect to my emotions. And that was my second step, connecting to the emotions. And then when I connected to my emotions, suddenly everything got overwhelming because I realized that actually the reason why I shut down from emotions was because I was too sensitive, and I can feel everything. And so then I learned all these different modalities to conquer, not conquer, but well, first of all, I was conquering emotions. So with the law of attraction, I was like, I'm not going to think negative. I'm just only going to focus on positive. And so I did that for a while. I was just like, every time I had a negative thought, I needed to think the opposite. I needed to think the opposite. And then eventually I realized, after maybe doing that for like 5 years or so, I don't know how long exactly, I was like, I don't want to be toxic positive. And so that's when I started going into somatics and started learning inner dance work, different work that go went into the somatic realm of the physical body. And I started respecting the body a lot more on how the body actually felt emotions and how I could detach from my body from a Buddhist perspective, detach from your senses to just purely be an observer. I did mindfulness in 2008 as well. And that's when I started that. And all kinds of meditations. That's where I did 800 events, um, to combine all of it together with shamanic gongs, journeys, release. So every time I did any sessions, I would include all of those modalities together, including quantum healing, and also I had electronic, like electricity frequency healing, to vibrate frequency at the vibrational hertz of certain cells that create certain results. Anyway, so I went into body with somatic healing, and then I realized that somatic healing is basically your body feels an emotion, releases it, and it's like a cathartic process for some, and then it allows you to move on. Because I wanted to move on from pain and from suffering, not
Mhm.
intellectually only, but I wanted to do it permanently. And what this means in a relationship perspective is you stop bringing up old fights. Like, if someone hurt you, you're not gonna be bringing up the old thing because you got hurt and you never actually resolved it properly. But if you keep bringing it up, you're like, "Okay, there's something there that I didn't heal, and I'm still using the same thing to guilt trip them or to prevent myself from getting hurt further." Then you realize that actually, no matter how much I wanna get rid of this and how much I wanna let it go, it's not going. And therefore, you need to do something to get that thing out, right? And if you use your brain to do it, it's not gonna come out. If you use your breath to do it, which is one of the somatic healing ways, you can reach it, but sometimes it still comes back and you still get triggered and you still go back and you regress into that thing. And so you're like, okay, how can I really surgically remove this? And so that it never comes back again. And that was my motivation to have complete and true transcendence from that. And how can I do that without doing it for the rest of my life? Right. And I don't want to like keep cleaning the same room over and over again. I want to move on to another room. And so that was that, and then from there, which is the last one, I started realizing that all of our wounds are reflected in the way that we treat vulnerability and sexuality, and Tantra was one avenue that saw sexuality as a pathway of liberation. And so, or not, it doesn't see sexuality as a pathway of liberation, it sees feelings and experiencing sensations as a path to liberation. Whereas Buddhism cuts the sensations out, Tantra promotes experiencing sensations. Of course, you can be attached or non attached, up to you. Um, but the idea is to feel it and then release it, right? And so that made me realize that not only am I allowed to feel sensations, I'm allowed to feel them in their full capacity without being completely overwhelmed and possessed by them. And at the same time, I can also rise and heal myself so that, it, even if it's not an incomplete healing, at least I can shift it into a higher frequency. And then I also realized that sexuality is where some of our deepest wounds, our shame, our pain, our confidence lies. Like, if you can't even express your deepest desires to someone, like, um, therein lies my relationship with my desire, right? And if I am able to heal that relationship with my own desire, then so many other things get healed. So past life regression work I've done before, and also there's just so many of them. You go into the past and you heal in the past, and so everything in the future gets healed as well. And so the Gestalt therapy is another modality that I do. So in sexuality, when you heal intimacy and love and vulnerability on the base level of, the deepest parts of your heart, that influences all of your relationship. And for me, I like to be effective if I can and if I'm up for it. And so when we look at that, I realize that people's lives changed. And that's why I also work with people on their sexuality and their leadership at the same time, and their sexuality and their meaning of work at the same time. because those are both of the same. And I've done in between of it, I was doing like business coaching for a long time too. Anyway, sorry, lots of things to tell you.
No, we could go on and on because it's so many modalities. I mean, uh, you know, we could have like a full season of shows or episodes on each of the modality with you. I mean, I could have done that because there's breath work, there's inner child work, there's past life regression, there is discovering sensuality and bringing that into leadership. But what I overall, what I can make a sense out of it is it's like this you know intimate dance of all the elements we talk about. There is fire, water, earth. I mean, that is so beautiful because on one hand, tantric wisdom, it brings out the fire, the most intimate desires within you. But then, for healing and to just cool down, there is the Taoist modality there. So it's really really beautiful. It's really very interesting to explore this. So thank you so much for Hani for sharing this. And yeah, I mean, as you mentioned about the exploring sensuality in the context of leadership, do you think that um, sensuality has been misunderstood as a weakness in leadership? Because there have been so many interpretations, especially with the normal resources available everywhere. I mean, how exactly it can be a source of deep magnetism?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Thank you.
Hmm.
I think sexuality and sensuality has been very demonized in the area of leadership because of all the sexual harassment cases, and also the idea that sexuality is imposed upon another person. And in the field of conscious sexuality, we're really talking about sexuality from a perspective of full consent, full allowance of like a win-win-win-win-win situation. We're not even talking about sexuality from a penetrative perspective, which is a lot of people think of.
Hmm.
Sexuality really is your comfort level with your own body and your own aliveness. Sexuality and sensuality is equating the idea of your aliveness. If your second chakra or your genitals are feeling free and you're embracing that and you're satisfied and fulfilled in that area, you're naturally going to be happier and your mood and your well-being is going to be higher. And as a result, you have more patience, you have more creativity, right? You literally use your genitals to create children, which is a whole universe in itself. And so imagine that creativity being redirected into your work, into the way that you manage your team, into solving really big problems that the world stage is facing, and how your business is surviving in the world stage, or how your economies or day-to-day life is being affected on a global scale, right? So a lot of creativity, problem-solving skills, connection skills, people conflict skills are all supported when you have more calmness, when your nervous system is relaxed, and when your breath is stable. And so leadership is about being able to maintain your own state and then being able to influence other people's state so that it also brings them back to themselves and their most empowered versions of themselves so that they can create and make decisions that's supportive of the company's vision, and that vision is a co-creative space that is in alignment with everyone. That's like the most utopian idealistic version of leadership, right? Like that everyone has a mission, and that mission is aligned to a vision, and then that vision is being executed by the whole group together, and then we're all doing this and resolving conflicts along the way and trying to do this in the bigger ecosystem of the world. So how does liberated humans add to that? It increases joy, and it increases goodwill, and it increases positivity within that cycle. Of course, people are going to be self-interest. Of course, people are going to want to like be greedy and try to take more than is enough. And of course, there are things like that. And at the same time, if we had more self trust and more fulfillment within ourselves, then we're going to be less trying to get external validation and external resources and external things to fulfill us. And we can work together and feel safer to collaborate if people are more transparent, right? Because sexuality is also and vulnerability requires transparency, honesty, and the feeling of safety. And so, how do you bring that feeling of safety into your workplace as a leader, right? Because when you're dealing with sexuality and you're dealing with a loved one and a lover, you are creating safety. How can you be in integrity? Like, integrity is hand in hand with sexuality. You're not going to open up your body to someone you don't feel is in integrity with themselves, right? So we're coming down to it, it's what is the most natural way of feeling safe so you can fully just open up as a human, open up as a flower, open up as a body that houses a million skill sets and capacities, right? What allows you to flourish? For a woman, that could be what allows you to fully feel your desire and and be okay feeling fully yourself and heal, right? And then as a leader, as a male, both are leaders, people and male. And then as a male, like what can make you feel so safe that you can address all of the challenges and the potential of emotional growth and connection and openness on that level too. So it's not just the mind, but it's also the body and also the heart and also the emotions and the energetics of that too. So if you're asking me how does sexuality converge with leadership, I think that the more you are open and inquisitive and curious and open-minded and open-hearted and open-bodied with your sexuality, and the more you
Mhm.
accept yourself, the less you need to grasp your magnetism, like what you were saying, just is automatic. It is simply there because you are it.
That's right. Absolutely. And um, I'm very sure you must be getting some kind of resistance initially, before uh, especially high achievers or the business leaders, they can open their minds. So, um, what kind of pushbacks you get normally, and how exactly does that transformation happen?
Um, pushbacks do I get? For some weird reason, I haven't gotten too many pushbacks from leaders. In fact, like, oh, some of my leaders are, are leading projects that are like 500 mil large and they're working on a super global space. They're talking to governments and they're reflecting back to me how I guess like just kind of shortening my previous sentence. I guess the way that I enter into a leadership conversation or a conversation about coaching with leaders is I typically just ask them what are their challenges, or they approach me and they ask me how do I help them. And so we typically work with energy work first. We don't even really go to sexuality unless they're super interested in that. And then from there, they see the impact of the energy work. And then they realize, like, hey, actually, you're also doing sexuality. Let's do sexuality too. Or they come because they're like, super in love with their lover, or there's some big challenge because it's been like 14-year marriage and there's like no more sex, and they're like, help me with my lover or my love or my spouse, and then I help them with that, and they're like, oh, can you also do my leadership stuff, or what do you think about this work thing, or how can we channel that energy into that, because I teach people how to circulate energy through non-ejaculatory orgasms, and also how to males to have multiple orgasms without ejaculation, to preserve energy and to channel into creativity. And so once they learn that, they're like, "Oh, cool. Like, what else can we do to sort of utilize this qingqi," which is Chinese for the sexual energy. And in tantric tradition, it's the prana, right? The prana to, or the yogic tradition, it's prana to fuel your energy. So if you have more energy, you have more attention, you have more attention span, energy span, capacity. So you said your first question was, "How do I deal with the pushback?" And then what was the second question?
How does the transformation look like? I think you answered both the questions for me. I understood it because once they realize that yes, this is working, I am now receptive. I am now open to accept this. I think they definitely will have open minds to explore sensuality as well as a part of strength in leadership. So
And usually a lot of people come to me at, like, pretty dire moments. They always say, "Oh my god, I wish I came to you 6 months ago," or "I wish I came to you a year ago." People come to me, like, literally, like, at the breaking point, right? And then we have to do, like, daily sessions to get them to, like then they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so helpful. Why didn't I come to you earlier?" And so I think also the pushback is not, like, a very obvious one. It's more of a lack of action in the beginning.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's quite a powerful statement. And it is true. It is definitely true.
They're not, like, actively pushing back. They're just like, "Ah, I don't need it. I don't need help. I don't need help." And then it's like, "Everything is exploding. I need something right now."
Ah, okay. Great, honey. And before we wrap up, of course, since you talk about mind body alchemy, any tools or daily practices that you would recommend for all of us, for all of us who may be, feeling
In the body, clarity. I mean, I have so many recordings and so many practices. I have a whole program called the Sensual Liberation Program that takes you through every stage of release work, energy. I used to do this program called Matrix Unplugging where I clear 200 blocks so that the body and the mind can. So, my idea, just like what we said in quantum, is that everything is connected at the base level. But somewhere along the line, we start disconnecting to all the things. And so eventually we're super convoluted and not super connected. And we need to take daily action to connect everything back together. And so breath work is definitely one of the practices that I do every single day, no matter what. Even if someone hits you with, a super scary, intense situation and you have an emotional reaction to it, breath work will take you through that. The types of breath work. I think the other day I was like teaching at a law firm and I showed them 66 different types of meditation and I incorporated breathwork into it. So there's so many. And in the Sensual Liberation Program, I teach like 5 main ones. And that is the most used one that I do is a 10 count in, 10 count hold, and 10 count out, and 10 count hold. So 10 counts everything, brings your nervous system down to parasympathetic nervous system. So I would recommend that as the uh, quick and thorough yet immediate shift. So it's a quick shift. Of course, you need to go inside and do inner work to reduce the trigger and to actually deal with the trigger. But if you want to quickly come back to center, this breath work will help you do that. I didn't even talk about all the breath work practices that I know, but it's okay. We will leave that to another time.
Yeah, lovely, Hari. Well, thank you so much. Um, I mean, I'm really blown away by this conversation today. This was so, and this was like an awakening in itself. So, honey, thank you so much for reminding us that true power it comes from within. Definitely, I mean, through presence, pleasure, and deep alignment. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Oh, can I share with you guys, like, if you wanna see the videos, on the Central Liberation Program where you can see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead.
So, in the show note links that Sana's gonna share, you're gonna get an invitation to a 4-part video series that talks about the Central Liberation Program. You don't have to only want to essentially liberate, but you can also want to heal in order to go through the whole journey. And so we go through the energetic blockages as model. First one is erotic flow. We check out what your erotic flow is, the energy, the activation. We talked about that is going to share the energy to the rest of the world. That's erotic flow, and also in your bedroom, what's eroticism? And then the second one is to clear your blocks. The third one is communication, how to communicate to receive more pleasure in your life in the bedroom and also before and after. And then the last couple of modules are about creating rituals, creating like these crazy, amazing containers where you literally get to work with your partner to bring sexuality to a whole other level of transcendental sex. I don't even know if I can say that word. And then the last one, it's the magic. So they call it sex magic. And basically, that is where you are harnessing this aliveness and you're creating power in your roles at work. So, so you get to hear more about that in the 4-part video. So she's gonna send that link down below or in the notes or somewhere in the captions. So check it out.
Yes, the show notes, definitely the show notes. And honey, thank you. Thank you once again for this deeply enriching conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mm. And to all of my beautiful cosmic listeners, if this conversation has sparked something within you, maybe an ache, a curiosity, a remembering, don't ignore it. That's your soul whispering. There's more. More freedom, more alignment, more of you waiting to be uncovered. And you are not here to play small. You are here to feel, to flow, and to fully rise. So, with that, this is your host, Sana, signing off from Cosmic Conference. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep tuning into the cosmic within. Thank you.